does feel a little foolish just staring at the screen. Hey, there we go. All right, we're live.
Okay, cool. Perfect. So thank you all for joining us today. We are with the CBP Committee and special guest Josh Datko. I'm going to go around and introduce everyone. First, I'll explain what we're doing today. So we're going to be talking about cryptocurrency wallets. We're going to introduce them to you, talk a little bit about how they work, go into more detail. We have a hardware wallet deconstructor. I'll let Josh explain what that means later, and that's probably not your official title. But so I'm Jess Beck. I'm the executive director at C4, and we do these live streams every once in a while to introduce you to our CBP or other committee members and to help give some free educational content for those of you interested in cryptocurrency and want to learn more. So this is our CBP, Certified Bitcoin Professional Committee, and I will start by introducing you to our committee leader, Dirk Anderson. Dirk, you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Dirk Anderson, and leader might be a stretch, but I'm on the CBP, one of the members of the CBP here, and I'm happy to have all of you here. Like Jessica said, we're going to talk a lot about wallets, and it's a really fundamental and basic element of getting involved in crypto. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to share with everybody just kind of the how to get started sort of thing. So by day, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Salt Blockchain, and I'll pass that back to you, Jessica.
Cool. Thank you, Dirk. And you are a leader. We appreciate everything you're doing. You're so humble. Next, I'd like to introduce Janine, who is a member of the CBP committee. She's also a privacy researcher and journalist. Janine is not on video because of exactly what I just said, being a privacy person. So Janine, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi. Yes, I'm a privacy researcher and investigative journalist. The thing that I'm probably most known for in the space is the podcast Block Digest that I've been doing for a couple of years. And I'm also the author of a newsletter called This Month in Bitcoin Privacy, which got a grant from the Human Rights Foundation last year. And for anyone who tends to go to the Oslo Freedom Forum, I will be going to that in May. So if you want to actually see me and not just a blank screen, I'll be there.
Are you going to be wearing a costume like you did at another conference I saw you at, Janine?
Yes, of course.
So you'll sort of see you. I love it. Okay, cool. Thank you. And I recommend her newsletter. It is excellent. Next up, we have Rodney McInnes. Rodney is also on the CBP committee, and he was instrumental to our CBP professional course in terms of helping with the graphics. So Rodney and I had an excellent time coming up with some of the weird fun stuff in our CBP course. So if you haven't taken it and you're not a CBP, highly recommend. And some of the kind of weird fun ideas were like the brainchild of Rodney and I laughing our butts off together as we went through and created the different images. So I appreciated that about you, Rodney. And so would you introduce yourself and explain a little bit about what you do in the space?
No problem. My name is Rodney McInnes. I am a compliance nerd at Outlier Compliance Group in Canada. I've been nerding out over Bitcoin for quite a while, but creating those graphics with you, Jessica, was probably one of the laughiest sessions related to Bitcoin that I've ever done. So our company and my background, I am an AML compliance nerd, and I try to keep companies out of trouble. That's me.
Love it. Thank you. Okay, so we also have a special guest today who's not a part of the CBP committee, but he is an expert on hardware wallets and knows all kinds of stuff that you're going to want to stick around to hear. So Josh Datko is here today, and he is going to be teaching all of us a lot. So Josh, do you want to give a brief intro on your background, your history, and what we're going to learn today?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. It's a great honor to be with the CBP, and like all the content that you guys push out with all the educational stuff. So I really like the mission you guys have, and happy to be part of it today. I do several different things to try to keep busy with several different companies. Mainly in the embedded security space. Probably the talk that I'm most famous for in this area is a talk called Wallet.fail, where I was at CCC in Germany, one of the major hacking conferences, where we showed pretty major flaws in every hardware wallet. So that was a few years ago at this point, but I've been keeping up with all the hardware wallet stuff and improvements in the space or lack of improvements in the space. So that's usually that's the thing. Before that, I was in the Navy for 10 years, was a submarine officer, went around the world underwater. It has some fun stories about that as well.
Very cool. I want to hear those sometime. Thank you so much for being here today, Josh. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone watching and who will watch the video later will also appreciate it as well. You have a lot to share and we're excited to learn. So I believe we were going to start first by you giving us a brief intro into what cryptocurrency wallets are. And you were going to share, you're going to do some whiteboard drawing, correct?
Yes. I've got my fancy purple board. It's a purple board. So
okay, I'm very impressed
boarding.
because I don't know how to do this in general. So, and I can't draw. It would be horrifying. So
that's okay. All you have to do is be able to draw boxes and you're fine. But okay.
Often when I draw, things turn into looking like something you don't want them to turn into. I won't go into that, but
oh, okay. That's why you stick to boxes. I didn't make it simple. Okay, so in order to talk about hardware wallets, we kind of first have to introduce what a wallet is. And there is, I want to kind of build up to it. So, and I'll explain here as I switch over. So I'm going to switch over to my iPad and let's see if we can get some drawings going. So before we start with a wallet, let's start with the blockchain. And we've got this nice blockchain here, and we want to send some sort of transaction to this blockchain. And in order for that to happen, I think most of us are familiar with the concept, hey, we need some sort of private key. So if we have a private key and we can sign this transaction, I'm speaking really broad terms here, we can submit this to the blockchain. The blockchain can do all of its verification and everything. And if everything's good, check out all the transaction, all Bitcoin, UTXO, all that stuff. It's going to then submit it and it's going to go through the verification process. But the focus here that is not so much on that aspect. It's that we had to start with this private key. So the issue is, from the blockchain's point of view, we just have private keys, right? So there's no, I haven't used the word wallet yet. It just knows about private keys. And so the problem is humans are bad at math. And if we could just multiply 256-bit numbers in our head, that would be great. We could interface with the blockchain directly. We wouldn't have any of these problems with the computers, and everything would be really, really simple. But because humans can't multiply 256-bit numbers, we need computers to help them out. And then here is where life gets complicated. So all we need is this private key, but then and this is how things started, but this kind of goes into the traditional computer science thing of how do you manage all these keys, right? Because a key and then the associated public key is associated with an address. And so through a relationship, which we won't get into, but you could have multiple private keys and then somehow you would have to remember them or somehow keep track of them all. And the first wallets were like this. They just had bundles of keys, but this was not really manageable. So how do we make this easier? How do we kind of keep track of all these keys easier? Well, so through a series of BIPs, they've creatively come up with some ways to derive these keys. And so this is where the wallets kind of matured for the first time. Is we can start over here with the seed, and through some fancy cryptography, we can do derivations. So we can derive some other material. And then through some of the BIPs, we can basically get our private keys. And I'm skipping a whole bunch of steps there. They're all outlined in the BIPs. But what is nice about this process is that if we kind of just know what the seed is, then we can get back to that private key, and then we can interface with the blockchain. And then this is where most people would recognize that the seed is the mnemonic. And I know it starts with MN and then it trails off. So this then, through this seed and through this wallet derivation concept, is really a nicer way to have a wallet. And then the first definition of a wallet would be, hey, it's just this piece of software that manages your private keys. But I think now the wallet definition is a little more broad. And I would actually define wallets as software that help you interact with your assets on the blockchain, because they kind of do more than just key management. Because if you are starting out, the first, you're going to go download a wallet software, and it is going to do things like, let's take a Bitcoin wallet, for example. It's going to show you the Bitcoin balance, of which you're going to obviously have like 2,000 Bitcoin on there. And so that wallet software is not only managing your seed, but it's helping you show your transaction history. It's helping you collect all this information on the chain about what your balance is. So the wallet software itself, I think, is kind of grown in features, and it encompasses a lot more. So that's how I like to describe wallet. I'll open it back up here to see what the committee says about my definition, if they have any other takes on this. And I'll go back here to my face.
Yeah, and first thing
I'm curious. Oops.
For anybody listening who might not be familiar with, you heard Josh refer to BIPs a couple of times. BIP is a Bitcoin Improvement Protocol, or proposal rather, and basically it's how people offer up suggestions on improving the Bitcoin protocol and network. And the definitions that define things like the mnemonic keys and the wallets are in there. There are a couple of BIPs in particular that if you're thinking about getting your CBP, you need to be familiar with, and that's probably BIP 39 and BIP 44. So you can go, Google those, look those up, and see what those are. But I just wanted to throw that out there so that people know what BIPs are.
Yeah, I think that's good. And Josh, I do like your definition. You said wallets help you interact with your assets on the blockchain. I think that's a good way to put it, because when we often think about wallets, we might think of the actual wallet that we fold up and put in our back pocket. Or, interestingly, I think that what a wallet is has changed in many of our minds anyways. Like my wallet is my phone right now, because I put my cards in there and everything else is electronic. So I don't have a traditional wallet anymore. I don't really carry cash, but maybe that was like kind of the first step over into this new type of wallet. And now when we talk about wallets and we're talking about cryptocurrency, we're not talking about something physical. We're talking about, well, we might be talking about something physical, but we can also talk about something that's a software wallet that is online. Before we get into a little bit further, I think it'd be cool for us to each say what our first experience was with a cryptocurrency wallet. Was it an actual physical wallet, or was it something that is software and is, just online? Anyone want to go first with what your first wallet was?
I'll go. I think I definitely remember running Qt Bitcoin on old iMac, of which I have convinced myself I no longer have that hard drive, just so I can save the pain of searching through a stack of old hard drives. But that is probably the first one. And then on Ethereum, my Ether wallet, I think, was my first web wallet that I remember.
Okay, cool. What about you? Anybody else? Dirk, Rodney, Janine?
Yeah, mine was also just Bitcoin node, but my first non-node wallet was actually a hardware wallet. Went straight to and it was a KeepKey, and yeah, the process I remember going through the process for setting it up, as well as utilizing a crypto steel to record my mnemonic phrase in case it ever melted or caught fire or anything like that. And let me tell you, putting the little letters into a crypto steel is a lot of fun. So
I don't remember exactly what my first software one was, but I remember it being far too complex for my tiny bit of tech savvy. And Dirk, hearing the crypto steel makes me chuckle, because I remember literally bleeding for Bitcoin with her first gen crypto steel, which needed a little more sanding. I think hardware, I think I got Trezor long before. I think that was my first, which was easier than software, that's for sure.
Yeah. Janine, what about you?
Sorry about that one.
That's okay. It kind of sounds like you're practicing right now. It sounded like change of some sort, so I'm kind of into it. While we're waiting
Yeah.
for you to be able to join, I'll share mine. My first wallet was, I think it was Jack's was my first wallet. And what's interesting is like what wallets you should use change. And it's hard to keep up with what's the right wallet to be using at the time. And also it depends on what currency you're using. My first hardware wallet was a Trezor, which was gifted to me by somebody who I trust. It was unopened, obviously, that's important. And then Janine actually helped me set it up because I had no idea what I was doing. I was very confused. And so I had a trusted friend help me figure out how to do it. And that was super important and helpful to me because it's very nerve-wracking when you don't know what you're doing with some type of technology. And then attached to that is actual money. Like, so not, if you screw something up online when you're like tweeting, it's embarrassing, whatever. But when you screw something up and you lose your money, that's moves from embarrass. And I'm sure we've all done something where we've lost money. But it's a challenge, and having somebody you trust who can help you with it makes a big difference. Janine, are you able to talk now, or should we come back to you later?
Just jump in there for a second as well and say, I think it's what you said, right, Jessica, is really kind of related to what Josh's comment about like how wallets have changed and improved, right? Why do you change a wallet, right? And because it's not, I mean, obviously there have been over time issues, security issues, and that sort of a thing with wallets, but also wallets have just become more feature rich, right? Once upon a time, a lot of people, and in fact, I think Mr. Josh McDougall, who was originally on the CBP, used to say that he didn't like calling them wallets in the first place because really they were keychains, right? They were just storing your keys. But Josh Datko's comment, now they show you your balance. If it's a software wallet that's online, it will show you the value of that because it's constantly getting the price feed, so it knows how much your crypto is worth in whatever fiat value you choose, and it can provide a lot of other features. It can keep track of your buys and sells. It can allow you to exchange one cryptocurrency for another cryptocurrency instead of so it's not just a matter of storage. And so there are a lot of features that might make you choose to move from one wallet to another beyond just how secure it is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let's see here. Okay, Janine, did you want to talk about yours and then we'll go back to the demonstration?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I mean, in terms of the first wallet I generated, that was also with Bitcoin QT. When I first really understood what Bitcoin was about, then I downloaded the whole thing in the client on my computer and I ran that. But at the time, I didn't have Bitcoin. So unfortunately, the first wallet that I ever had Bitcoin in was blockchain.info. I quickly realized that was a very, very bad idea in less than a few months. Because their 2FA system got really screwed up. It's a browser wallet. I would not recommend browser wallets. And so immediately after that, I moved to things like hardware wallets and also privacy wallets like Samurai and Wasabi. So yeah, I would say stick with Bitcoin clients or stick with hardware wallets or privacy wallets.
So yeah, as we dive back in and move on, maybe Josh, maybe you could talk just a little bit about the difference between like a third party wallet, a hot wallet, a cold wallet, that hardware wallet, kind of define what the differences are.
Yeah, sure. Let's see if we can make a taxonomy here. So I'll probably forget some, so we can all chime in. We can help make the drawing. All right. So if we say types of wallets, we want to come up with all the different types of wallets. All right, and so probably the first distinction, I think Dirk was maybe even mentioning here, we have custodial and non-custodial. Non-custodial. So custodial, so I think you all probably covered this on probably one of the live streams before, but it's just a matter of who's holding the wallet, right? So custodial there's probably a better definition, but the one I have in my head is that, hey, someone else is holding this. So it's like a third party. And non-custodial is like you're holding it, which is weird when it has the non, I guess it's from the perspective of the third party, which is always what's confusing me on the,
right.
So
I tend to think of it in terms of the private key, right? Who has that private key that can actually sign the transaction, right? Is that you or is that somebody else?
There you go. I like that. So on the custodial side, really all of these wallets, they almost look abstracted to you because these would be like exchanges, right? So if you're on an exchange, that exchange has to then interface with whatever blockchain in order to make the transaction, but you kind of don't even see the wallet interface at that point. You see the exchange's interface, and the wallet is really completely abstracted to you. So they presumably have a hot wallet that is behind the scenes, and a hot wallet just simply means that the way I think about it, the hot wallet is that like the key is essentially in RAM. So me being a hardware person, I want to know where the key is in the computer. The hot wallet, the key is exposed in RAM, and it is available, right? So that is in my definition of hot wallet. So this could be like a server or something, and it has the wallet ready to use. But on the custodial side, it doesn't actually. It looks more like whatever the exchange interface, trading interface than hot. But on the non-custodial, then we have all other types of wallets, right? So we already mentioned a few. Let's see, we got the hardware ones. Janine mentioned privacy ones. We talked about mobile ones. I think Janine also mentioned web ones. My favorite one, besides the hardware one, to talk about brain ones, brain wallets. Let's see, do we have any other ones? Oh, paper wallets. I'll just list them out and then we could go enumerate them. Am I missing any? Oh, you can't see my heads. All right, so hardware wallets we'll talk about a lot. Privacy wallets. Well, I'll turn it over to Janine to explain those. I think she'll probably do a much better job than I. Mobile wallets I would just define as wallets that are on a mobile device. So like something like Trust Wallet or something. What I didn't even know. I can't even read what I wrote there. We'll skip that one. The brain wallets, there's two versions of brain wallets. There's the OG brain wallet which is not recommended. You would memorize a passphrase and then use a derivation to come up with the seed. There's a great academic paper called "You Can't Hack My Brain," and it's people showing how they basically reversed brute force attacked the brain wallet key derivation. So don't do that. According to Bitcoin Wiki, the new brain wallet is just memorizing your words, which I wish they would have. Which I guess is the standard way of accepting it. I wish they would use the new term because of the legacy thing with old brain wallets. But you just memorizing your seed phrase, I guess is the new. Well, the first one was coming up with a passphrase, and you would just memorize a passphrase. And then I can't remember what the derivation was, but it was not it was some software to derive it, but it was not a very strong derivation, combined with the fact that people don't memorize strong passphrases. So basically people were able to crack all these brain wallets. And in the paper, it had this, the paper had this great conundrum because the researchers cracked all the brain wallets, but then how do they get in touch with the wallet holders to let them know their wallet's been hacked? And so they ended up doing this thing where they moved like 2 cents or something to a known wallet that the researchers had that they could look up the public key. If they ever looked at their wallet and be like, who moved my 2 cents? Then hopefully they would Google the address and then figure out that, hey, their brain wallet's been cracked. But the paper I would recommend. And then paper wallets are, I don't know how much they're in use to these, but these are basically QR code. And then there is a BIP where you can encrypt the actual seed phrase via QR. So you would scan it, type in a passphrase, and then get back to seed. So, but I'll turn it over to Janine to explain the nuance with privacy wallets.
Yeah, so in the early days, there wasn't really any specific privacy wallet. That's really only been happening since about 2015, and that was mostly with the advent of Samurai Wallet, which is at the time was just a Android mobile wallet. It still is an Android mobile wallet, but they've now built out other things, other clients like Whirlpool, which does CoinJoin, which we can break down. It's basically just a mixer for Bitcoin. And that can run on your desktop. They've been building out their own custom node software as well to kind of manage the mobile features in conjunction with Whirlpool. And so basically the privacy wallets, I mean, most of them, any wallet that calls itself a privacy wallet does a thing called CoinJoin, which basically gets a bunch of other users together, and they all submit, most of the time it's the same amount of Bitcoin, so like 0.1 usually. And everybody submits their coins into one transaction, and that then when you see the transaction on the blockchain, you basically see, coins coming in from different places, getting mixed together, and there's no direct link in the coins that come out of that transaction to the coins that went in, and so effectively you've mixed them. And so basically any privacy wallet in Bitcoin usually does that. At the moment, there's 2 main wallets, but it's recently spread out to more. There's Samurai, which is mobile for Android, and Wasabi, which is desktop, and they've recently released a new version. Unfortunately, there's recently been a controversy where, due to some regulatory pressure, they've decided to start excluding some coins from people that they worry may be involved in criminal activity, according to the explanation. So that's blacklisting, and that's a new thing for privacy wallets. So far, we haven't seen that happen. There's also Sparrow Wallet, which implements a lot of the same features as Samurai. And there's also Chaincase, which is a mobile wallet on iOS that is very similar to Wasabi. And there's a lot of other features that Samurai implements besides just CoinJoin, which are really interesting. Like, for example, you can create more than one transaction in a row, so that, for example, if you're worried that you are doing this CoinJoin, which is, it's not an illegal activity, you're fine to do that in most countries around the world. But some exchanges worried about regulatory pressure have started saying, well, we won't accept coins from CoinJoins, and if you use CoinJoin after you withdraw from an exchange, we'll basically shut down your account, or we'll freeze it and ask you for more information about why you were doing that. So one of the strategies is to basically create multiple hops, so that it's not obvious whether the coins that you're either submitting to the exchange or withdrew from the exchange even belong to you anymore, or belong to you at the time that you did the CoinJoin. So that's one privacy feature. It's basically, with these kinds of things, there's a practice called blockchain analysis. I, in some cases, call it blockchain surveillance, where basically you have people who are staring at screens and analyzing this blockchain data, and they're trying to determine who owns what coins, what is the purpose of a transaction, things like that. And there's certain heuristics that they use to figure out that. And a lot of it is just based on probability. There's very little certainty in a lot of that work, but they have to basically come up with a probability that a certain thing has happened, or a certain transaction has a certain purpose, or is owned by a certain person. And then they make decisions and recommendations to their customers. And so a lot of the techniques that are implemented by privacy wallets are basically saying, well, we're going to do something that makes you think this, but it might also mean this. It's essentially playing around with the probabilities of what a given transaction means and what it's doing.
Thank you. That was super interesting. Thanks.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
Josh. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Dirk.
no, I was just going to say, and we probably, we don't want to go into like great detail on every one of those wallets types that Josh listed out. Their knowledge of different wallet types is part of the CBP exam and training programs. So you can get more details on that through some of the other CBP materials and stuff. But I think, as Josh said when he introduced himself, right, he's kind of a hardware guy, right? Focuses on that. So maybe having him now talk a little bit more about how the hardware wallets work and what are potentially some of the concerns and stuff with them.
Yes, and right before we go into that, Janine, maybe we want to do a live stream coming up on privacy wallets. I think that'd be interesting, and we should also check what we have on the CBP about it and where we're at. But yes, okay, Josh.
And maybe even privacy around the blockchain in general, not just wallets,
yeah.
but blockchain and privacy, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people think it's more private than it really is. So.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, I would watch that. That would be awesome. Okay, so let's then talk about hardware wallets. So why do we have hardware wallets and what do they do? So let's go to there. So the fundamental issue is that we as humans still don't know how to write secure software. And because software kind of sucks, people seem to always trust hardware more. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I don't think people should be trusting hardware as much as they should, but this is the general school of thought. So the idea is, so before hardware wallets existed, there was this concept in information security of, hey, we'd have this device, and in this device would be a private key. And it'd be separate than your main computer because, again, software sucks. And then if there's a compromise on your computer, your private key is just physically not there, right? So there's no way to extract this key. You're just having the separation into this other device. So the kind of before, think of this as like something like a YubiKey. There was like these USB dongles you'd plug in and they would have keys on them. And so, why can't we use that? Why can't we use that for hardware wallets? Why don't we just put our like keys on here, have it on like a USB dongle and plug it in? Why is there this special hardware for hardware wallets? Well, that has to do with that cryptocurrency is kind of unique in that you don't actually really need to steal the key. You just need to be able to steal access to the key. And what I mean by that is that say we had this thumb drive model where we've got the private key on the thumb drive, which was everybody was happy for that for decades for regular security. And if we try to do that with cryptocurrency, what happens is, you want to send some crypto over here, and then there's malware that gets on the computer. And then if you just have this thumb drive plugged in, well, that malware could then interface to that USB thumb drive and then immediately sign a transaction and send it out without you knowing anything happened. And so this is why it's not sufficient just to have a, kind of like a USB stick having the private key, because it does serve one purpose of keeping the private key off there. But unfortunately, the cryptocurrency threat model, which is just the word that security people say to say, hey, what are the threats? What are the kind of, potential things that could go wrong? Has to include this other scenario. So we have to change the hardware wallet a little bit. So let's do that. So let's delete. And now let's come up with something that can improve on this a little bit. Well, so we want to send this okay. So we want to send this transaction to this device. And so this device, we need to account for the fact that something could be sending it kind of like without the user's interaction. So here, let's build a device. So obviously the user has to be able to see what they're going to sign or what the transaction is going to be. So we need some sort of screen. Okay, and then we need to be able to interface with the device. The human needs to be able to interface with the device. So let's give it some buttons. And that way we can see the crypto over here. And then it has some means of communicating back to the main computer. And then this is the general concept of the hardware wallet, is that not only is the key over here, but the hardware wallet needs to know enough about the transaction so that the human can look at this thing and say, yes, these are all the right things, and then click yes or no. So in general, this is what a hardware wallet is. This is why it's unique to, compared to other hardware security devices, hardware wallets are kind of unique because of this extra thing of essentially you should be able to verify the transaction and approve it on this separate device. So I'll stop there before I get into my cynical take, but that's the general take.
So I was going to say the distinction there is that when you plug the USB key in, you're giving the computer itself access to the key, whereas with a hardware wallet, the computer never has access to the key. It sends the transaction over to the hardware wallet and it gets signed on the hardware wallet and sent back, instead of plugging a USB in and letting the computer access the key long enough to sign the transaction, right?
Yeah, right. So in the USB model, the laptop can't get to the key, but it could build the whole transaction, send it over to the USB, and get that all signed kind of behind the scenes. Whereas the software on the hardware wallet has an extra step where it's forcing it basically will force the verification of it before it sends it back. I think I said what you said, but just tried to repeat it. So we're in full agreement. So that is the hardware wallet model. So now, there is I don't know. I've looked at a bunch of these. So I'm about to show you a bunch of the hardware wallets. I've looked at a bunch of them. And so Michael Perklin was talking yesterday, and there was a great, so if you didn't see his scene with the CBP, I would recommend go watching that. We talked about security best practices. And the thing I'll say here is that, especially for people new in this space, it's good to have rules. It's good to have like, do this, don't do that. That really helps. And so the advice generally is to be most secure, you should use a hardware wallet because of the thing that I just described. That being said, sometimes when you learn like a sport, like you're learning tennis and you got the two-handed backhand, and then you're like, well, I want to be like Roger Federer and I want to do a one-handed backhand. Sometimes you have to break the rules, and there's sometimes special situations that that advice doesn't always apply. And so after looking at a bunch of hardware wallets, I'm not so much a fan of them anymore, which we can talk about some of it. But in general, I think the general advice happens, and I can nuancedly explain why I don't like the concept of hardware wallets. But first, I will show, before I get into my take, I'll promise I'll give the general, I'll toe the line, and I want to show you what hardware wallets look like when you open them up, and we can have a nice show and tell. So let's look at what some hardware wallets look at. So let's go to my desk, boom, and let's take a look. Okay, so I have a collection of these things, of which I have torn apart, and I'm looking for my submarine, which is my pointer, and I can't, oh, here it is. Okay, so I like to use my submarine as a pointer. So, okay, so let's start with probably the most common one, which is a Trezor. And I have to find one that all my Trezors don't have a chip on them. Well, let's look at the Trezor Model 1. So this is a printed circuit board, PCB of or I guess it's the Model T. It's the new version. And so what these hardware wallets are just basic electronics. So they are a green or black. That's the printed circuit board. What a circuit board does is basically has electrical signals routed out to different components, and it has multiple layers inside. So if you're trying to get traces from this chip to the connector, the traces go through the circuit board. And you can see here, I have a bunch of wires. Basically, what a circuit board does is replace a bunch of wires with a nicely manufactured substrate. So it's typically fiberglass. So and then then you can only put components really on the top side and the bottom side of a circuit board. So if we take a look at a keep key here, right? So anything on the top or bottom is the actual electronic components, right? So inside the circuit board is just going to be typically traces. There's some more advanced techniques, but that's generally the case. And all these things are just a little computer, which is typically called a microcontroller, some sort of screen, some sort of input, and some sort of connector to back. So basically the diagram I just showed, this is what all these are. So if you look, so if I try to look at this guy here, we've got the main microcontroller here for the Trezor T. It has a connector to go back. And where's the buttons on this guy? I think this one's a touchscreen, I think. So the touchscreen then has a cable coming back, and that's where the inputs come back into the microcontroller. And physically, the seed in a Trezor T is stored inside this component right here. So this guy that the submarine bow is touching, it is in that chip. So if you Bunny Wang, who's a very famous hardware hacker, likes to say there's no secrets in hardware, you just need a bigger microscope. So if you were to decap this chip, and then you can look at layers of the silicon, and then you can basically look at all the gates and go through, you would eventually see a block of memory. And that memory has to be physically set with your ones and zeros for that key. So this is the magic behind these hardware wallets. So on this particular one, the attack that I did here is I actually removed this chip, which is again where your seed would be contained. I took it off and I put a replacement chip on there, soldered it back down. And then here I was showing that I could actually do whatever I want to this chip after I hot air reworked the chip. So this would be like an Amazon attack. I would get the device, pop it open, swap it back, say, Amazon, I'm sorry, I meant to get the wrong one. They put it back in the fulfillment center, and then someone goes, oh, sweet, Trezor Model T, $10. That's a steal. They buy it, and it has my modified firmware on there, and they would not be able to tell the difference.
And so what can you do
that's
with
the
that
kind of
now?
attack I was demonstrating here. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What can you do with that? So if you've done that and you've returned it and I buy it, what are you able to do with having added that to my new in quotes Trezor?
Yeah, so the simplest one, which you don't have to do any of this to do, is just to set up the wallet first, right? So this was an attack that was happening on Amazon a while ago. Basically, someone would just pre-set up the wallet, put it all back in the box. The tamper stickers are pretty easy to put back. You use a hot air gun, you can remove any tamper sticker without showing any residue. And then you get the wallet and you're like, oh, sweet, it's set up. And then you start using it. And then once funds show up on the wallet, then the attacker just swipes them off. So that one doesn't need any hardware to do. And that's still, I would consider a supply chain attack. With this one, basically, you could do something similar where you could modify the firmware. So I could maybe look like you're making a wallet where it looks like you're generating the thing, but it's actually using the seed that I've got in there. So because at that point, I would have made my own custom firmware, my own custom everything, and I would have control over the screen, control over the buttons. So I could let the user think that they have got their new wallet created, and really I'm just using this one. So that one would be a little bit more advanced. It's much easier for attackers just to preset up the wallet with software.
Okay, consider me terrified. Continue.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
and this
on
is
the
why,
supply chain one,
really quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Really quick, this is why you should, if you're buying any hardware wallets, you should always buy them directly from the company that makes them, because that eliminates this reselling, basically reselling attack, where you're not getting it from the official distributor, and so it's unclear who's had access to them and what motives they might have.
Which is why Jessica was very clear on the fact that she got her first Trezor from someone that she trusted.
And it wasn't open, and someone I would like trust with my life. So I wouldn't be worried about them trying. Yes. So that in general, though, you should not be doing that. Don't take my advice. Don't consider somebody you trust to be like the right person to do that. I was lucky in that the person who gave it to me is somebody who, like I said, I trust with my life. But most of the time, be very careful. Yeah.
And
So yeah, so I definitely
never
agree with
accept a
that.
wallet from Josh Datko.
Yeah. Go. Sorry, Dirk. Cut you off.
I said, and clearly never accept a wallet from Josh Datko.
Oh yes. Well, I've got a bunch of them. I've got some spares. So I do agree with that. They should always buy the wallet from the manufacturer. That being said, this is where the kind of issue I have with that is that we use a lot of electronics and a lot of computers from all different places. For example, for Apple, we're not necessarily buying it from a Apple store. No, so they're in the state of hardware security, like it shouldn't, the fact that that you have, so I agree with the statement that you have to buy it from the manufacturer now, given the state of where the hardware wallet security is. But I don't think that's necessarily should be a case. Like there should be a way where we can get electronics from other means without having to do that. But I actually think that's more of a ding on the current hardware security models right now, that they don't protect against this than is kind of like general like electronics advice, I would say. But yes, for now you have to buy them from the manufacturer. Okay, so the other ones. Let's see. So with a Trezor, the nice thing about a Trezor is that it is more open source than others. So you can actually build your own Trezor. So that's what I did here. And I took this is the Trezor 1, the original, Trezor 1. Man, Trezor T. I can't remember. They always mix me up. It's the OG Trezor. So you just take that chip that's in the middle, and then here I've got the buttons, and I added a display, and this totally works. right? So this is a essentially the Trezor hardware wallet that you can just make because their schematic is open. You can solder the components, flash it, and it's a little bit more tricky. They're like the Trezor doesn't have, the instructions aren't as nice to do this, but was totally possible. And this is one of the things that we use to help do our attack. So the nice thing about a Trezor is that you can recover a seed from it. So that's, most of these hardware wallet manufacturers, they want to, so the main thing, this goes back to my issue with hardware wallets. I got to go to Facecam to explain this. So the main thing with hardware wallets is to protect against that, hey, there's malicious software on my computer. I want to keep this on a separate device. But if we think about that drawing that I drew, that thing basically kind of looks like a phone, right? And so, it has a display, it has user interaction, and it can show a nice transaction. And my issue with hardware wallets in general is, one, the UI is really, really horrible on most of these. They're very, very painful to set up. They're painful to use. I've got a fully working Commodore 64 back here, and I think that thing is nicer to use than some of these hardware wallets with how painful they are. And if the main threat is, hey, we just want this thing separated, then you could just use like a second phone or something where it's just, hey, I've got these things here and this thing is separated. Then these hardware wallets kind of like have, because they want to sell hardware wallets, they keep adding features, and then people on YouTube get affiliate links for selling them. So then they've added all this stuff. So then there's this idea of like, should it be physically protected? And so on certain wallets, there's certain hardware attacks where you can recover your seed. And so this could be a feature or an anti-feature. Oh, my face got camera. I can still, it'll come back. I got so excited. When I get so excited, my camera starts to comes on. But I'll just give it 1 second. It's coming back. Okay, there we go. I get so excited. So, but with the Trezor, the attack that we showed is, oh, sorry.
We like your enthusiasm, so that's okay.
Oh, yes,
your camera can sense it too. It's good. It's good energy.
Yes. So on the Trezor, you can do a hardware attack called glitching, which will bypass all the hardware protection features on the Trezor and completely recover the seed. And so this is the attack that we showed it requires physical access, one, and it is the attack that we showed in the wallet.fail talk. And so is this a bad thing or a good thing? I'm not totally sure, because I have had so many emails of people who have lost their funds due to the wallet interface, and they have not kept their backup seed, and they've lost their PIN, and they've had 7 figures or more locked up in a Trezor that now they're actually able to recover. And so if the main concern is, hey, I just don't want my web stuff to be I don't want malware on my computer to get the private key or do a transaction, we don't actually need these hardware wallets. There could be like a concept of using this like a phone or a second thing that is somehow just doing that very slim attack. I think the issue is these hardware wallets have added this thing of, well, I want to make them physically protected and all this other stuff. And most people, when I ask them, hey, how do you physically protect the wallet? Well, they just don't leave it out of their site. So I don't know. The frustration I have, the nuanced frustration I have, is that hardware wallets want to sell you products, and they've kind of controlled the narrative of what they should be doing. And I think it's sometimes important. That being said, I will say that it's still the more secure way, but I just have some issues with how they're making some of their claims. But I'll stop talking now and open it up for debate, because
I'm muted. I think that's interesting. And I think that there's, different perspectives based on somebody's ability to hack into a hardware wallet, right? And how, like, your knowledge is, for example, much more so than mine on how to do this. I wouldn't be, if I broke into my Trezor or Ledger, then it would be broken, and that would be the end of it for me. That would be the end of that physical structure. But you're able to, do things. So I think that like somebody's what level they're at and what they're able to do definitely ties into this. And also, like, in terms of security, where you live, what you do with it, where, like, how much you have on it, right? Where you do you have crypto steal? Where is that? There's so many different components of it that I think that's important too. But I'd like to hear from the committee members what your perspective is on hardware wallets versus hot wallets versus, like, what do you do without telling us what your passphrase is?
So as a person who tries to be as phone free as possible, which basically means that I don't use them at all, or very little. For me, the trade-off between a hardware wallet and a phone is mostly in terms of I'm aware that the phone hardware, especially, but also other parts of the stack for phones have a lot of undesirable features that I would not want to have in something that is storing private keys. I mean, for one, most people would not know how to buy a phone that I would, or at least I would feel comfortable with using that to secure keys. There's a wide variety of phones. There's a wide variety of places to get phones. Not all of them are trustworthy. The cost of the hardware wallet versus the phone. I mean, if you're getting an Android phone, it's comparable. I mean, you can get very cheap Android phones, but there's a range. And I probably wouldn't recommend getting a used phone for this case because you have no idea whether they've properly cleansed it from the prior user. So there's a lot of aspects of phones that I don't like in general. And so I would still lean on, like, I would agree a phone versus a computer it's better to go with the phone if you don't have access to a hardware wallet. But I would say if you have a choice between a hardware wallet and a phone, I would personally go for the hardware wallet because it's essentially a phone that is, even if you don't have a hardware wallet that's completely open source, it's far more open source than probably any phone you're ever going to find. That means you have the ability to, repair it, to open it up. That's not something you can get with a phone. A lot of phones, if you open them up, that literally voids the warranty. That could brick the phone, especially an iPhone. I would never, unless you know what you're doing, you should never try and do anything like that with an iPhone. So I would say I would still favor the hardware wallet because I mean, there's a number of arguments in favor of the phone where, you go buy a phone. You could be using that phone for any purpose, so you're not exactly broadcasting that you're interested in cryptocurrency. That could be an argument for the phone. Whereas if you order a hardware wallet, you're kind of broadcasting like, hey, I'm into cryptocurrency, especially if you're not taking care to, for example, use a post box when you're ordering it. If you're giving your name and address, then who knows who gets access to that information. Me personally, because I know how to manage that stuff and because I'm already aware and have a kind of disdain for mobile devices, that's the reason why I still fall in hardware wallets. But I do agree a phone is definitely better than your average desktop.
Hey, Jessica, we've only got a few minutes left here. Do we have any questions from folks that we want to jump on before we keep going?
Well, somebody asked for a demo emphasizing new development and more wallet features. I think that going into that specifically would be a good option for another live stream because there's a lot more on that. But yeah, there's a debate going on about functionality versus security. So I guess it'd be interesting too, like Janine, Josh, you're both really technical, and talking about that is, for someone like me who's less technical, it's very interesting. It's fascinating in terms of being able to open an Android phone versus an iPhone. Well, if I opened either, goodbye. The way I could open it would be with a hammer, and that would be the end of it. But so I was saying, it's the level of technical. Rodney, you don't come from a technical back. You're more like me in terms of not coming from this technical background to start, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so what about you? What do you use? What's worked for you? Or what I've got options of what hasn't worked for me, things I've screwed up, but maybe we should focus on what has worked.
Oh, I think we've all screwed up before, and that's kind of par for the course. Especially it's less common now, I think. But I'm a hardware guy just because the amount of security I feel I need is granted by a hardware wallet. And that being said, I have a mobile wallet. It definitely has some funds on it, nothing substantial, and nothing that if I lost my phone, like the time I walked into the ocean with my cell phone in my wallet, that I had Doge on, which at the time it was like $200. I didn't care. So I hadn't backed up the wallet. I hadn't done any of the security side of, that. Walked into the ocean, my phone exploded, basically, like the battery killed the rest of the phone, and that was gone forever. And that's, a hard lesson learned when Doge started to go a little higher. But I also keep crypto on an exchange. And again, not very much. And it's an exchange that I feel enough trust in, mainly for the reason that they'll pay my Ethereum fees when I feel that I need to transfer something out. So that seems worthwhile and a risk worth taking. So I think different wallets for different needs, and like the bulk of mine is on a hardware wallet, which, thanks Josh, now I'm like far less comfortable than I was, but I've seen enough videos online of it happening before, that kind of the risk reward of the crypto that I have on that wallet. I feel comfortable enough that I'm not a huge target in that instance. And so, there are other kind of things that I do with that wallet to make sure that hopefully no one can get their hands on it.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome, Rodney. Right, that there are different wallets for different purposes. Right, we're all gonna use different wallets for different needs. Right, we're gonna have, it's using a hardware wallet to go out and buy a cup of coffee someday is probably not going to be super friendly or super easy, like Josh said. Right, the user interface on it tends to be a little bit cumbersome, and so we're going to have wallets on our phones that we can use to quickly pay for stuff. The hardware wallet, while it has its downside, helps prevent against the remote attacks, right? So to use Josh's terminology, it reduces kind of the attack vectors or the attack model against it, because you have to get physical access to it in most cases, versus being able to attack it from China or someplace, right, over the internet. So we're all going to use different wallets for different purposes. So,
which speaks to one of the coolest things, and kind of what got me into really understanding the power behind Bitcoin when I first heard about it was, in theory, I could memorize this set of words and take my wealth and escape to somewhere else. So like in the grand scheme of what wallet you're using, if I have to, cross a border, where the only thing I have on me is in my head, that contains either all or some of my net worth, like that is a really powerful feature. So, again, different security models for different volumes of value.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really
and I mean, yeah, we also, we see that happening at the moment. I'm hearing stories almost every day of someone leaving the Ukraine with, I haven't heard of anyone who's memorized their seed words, but I've heard of like thumb drives, tails instances, things like that, which is a special operating system. The other thing I would say, I'm not going to shill my employer, but sort of related to my employer. Another method, which we haven't discussed, is that you can mitigate kind of the dangers of using any one of these methods by using all of them in a multi-sig setup, where you're using either multiple wallets or keys in multiple wallets, multiple devices, in multiple different locations, where you would need to compromise a significant number of them in order to compromise the integrity of your funds or security of your funds. So, and just to clarify for anyone who doesn't know, multi-sig is basically just where, instead of using single sig, which is what these hardware wallets and most wallets do, where you only need one signature to authorize the transaction to send it, multi-sig requires multiple signatures from different keys to send a transaction from that address.
And the multi-sig, another important element covered on the CBP exam. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Josh, anything else you wanted to talk about, or anything you want to suggest that we follow up about at a future time?
Yeah, there is, just from the hardware side, there is a really interesting project that, again, I mentioned Bunny Wang. He was of the Hacking the Xbox fame. He has a project called Be Trusted. and it is on crowd supply. But it is one of the use cases there is a cryptocurrency wallet. And yeah, I think he's kind of like pushing the envelope of how you can trust hardware. So there's kind of an interesting, I mean, if you're interested in how do you trust your hardware and what is like the state of art of what that is, I would definitely recommend checking out Be Trusted. I think it's either Be Trusted or Precursor. There was 2 names for it, but it's Bunny Wang's and Zob's project. So that is, I think, probably state of the art in trying to get people to think about different hardware security concepts.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Well, we are at an hour. Anything else anyone wants to add to this before we say goodbye?
Just like to thank Josh so much for being here. I've known Josh for a couple of years now, almost 3, I think. And every time I talk to him, I usually walk away with my head hurting a little bit. So thanks so much for joining us here and talking about this, because it's such a fundamental part of working with Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much, Josh. I feel better educated. I feel terrified a little bit, but in a good way, because, right, we want to know these things. It's good to have this additional information. So I really appreciate you being here. I hope that you'll be a guest another time to talk more about it. I've never seen a hardware wallet opened up, so that was fascinating to me. I had you pinned so you couldn't see, but my face was like in the screen trying to see exactly what it looked like, because yeah, it's cool. I haven't seen it before. So thank you so much for adding so much value to our committee live stream. We really, really appreciate it and hope you'll come back again. And everyone else, thank you for being here. This is great. And I look forward to doing this again. So any parting words, Josh?
Nope, just, yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a great discussion with all y'all, and it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. Appreciate this. And yeah, we hope to do it again soon. Thank you.